Greetings, this is Ty, and I'm back to talk to you about a subject that interests me and I wanted to share my thoughts on. So the title of this video is called Generation X, the Not So Lost Generation. Now, one thing that really interests me about studying the generations is how they are perceived pretty much in the workforce. So Generation X are those individuals who were born between the years 1965 on up to, I would say, around 1981. Now, the Generation X generation is the sandwich generation between the baby boomers and the millennials. So Generation X is a unique generation because they are titled the lost generation, middle child syndrome. And I've just so happened to be part of Generation X because I am a 70s baby. I was born in 1977. So growing up as a Generation Xer, or a Gen Xer for short, I've encountered several different things in the workforce where I can see why it is that we were termed the lost generation. Now, because the Generation X is the sandwich generation between the baby boomers and the millennials, a lot of the real Generation X thought process is all of those individuals who mostly were born in the 70s and the early 80s. Now, the uniqueness about Generation X is because we are considered the latchkey kids. What the latchkey kids is when mommy and daddy went to work, because during our time, mommies was forced to go to work just as much as the daddies were. So a lot of us were left at home to babysit our younger siblings. Well, that's just in general. Of course, that didn't happen in my case. Yes, both my parents worked, but, we had after school programs that we went to. But for the most part, in the research, the Generation X, the latchkey kids, were left to handle the responsibilities of taking care of younger siblings while parents were working. So what that has done is it left us to be a little bit more responsible than I would say the later generations are. So we were introduced a lot for responsibility. So a lot of that has translated into how we operate as Generation Xers in the workforce. So Generation X, per the research, we're classified as being very cynical in some words. And I actually have reason for being cynical with the way that I think right now as a Gen Xer in my early 40s. One thing I remember when I was growing up in school, outside of school, there's certain things that I had to do. I was always told to figure things out. I wasn't always given the answers to certain problems, and teachers didn't make it easy. Pretty much we had to figure things out. A lot of times we was going to school. Yeah, we had teachers there. Yeah, we had teachers who would help us. But before they would help us, we actually had to sit and figure out. And as a Generation X in the workforce, even when I started my career, when I got out of college, I had to figure things out. Certain things that I was given, I didn't have the answers for. I had to figure them out. So our generation, even though a lot of people are consider Generation X cynical, we're not cynical. We just had to sit there and come up with answers to a lot of problems. We didn't have answers. We had to sit there and figure it out. Now, another thing that I've also experienced being a Gen Xer born in the 70s is the workforce. Now, I don't know how many of you watching this video are, baby boomers or millennials or Gen Xers, but just from my experience in Generation X, coming out of college, the one thing that I was always told was, yeah, you go to school, you get a degree, and you get a job. So, did just that. Went to college. I finished college. But the one thing that I found out in going for jobs is I would get a lot of job interviews, but the interviewer would say, you don't have enough experience for this job or that job. You need to get some experience. Well, being the cynical thought person that I am right now, I would say in my mind, okay, how am I going to get experience if I have none and I'm not getting hired? That was the ultimate question. So, what I was always told was, as a Generation Xer, maybe you need to go back and get more education in the form of a master's degree. So, of course, I went back, got a master's degree, did get a job along the way to gain that experience. And now, with the master's degree and with the experience, now the thing is, you know what? You have too much education. You have too much experience. So now that makes you overqualified. So coming out of college, it was always, you don't have enough experience or no experience. You need more. You need higher education. Go back, get higher education, get the experience. Now you have too much. So see how Generation X, how our transition is to what we had to go through when we first got out of college until now when we out of college and with all this experience. It always seems like it was just this never-ending cycle with us. And so now that the baby boomers are older, now a lot of them are retiring and leaving the workforce. Who do you think all of the jobs are going to? Is it going to Generation X? Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't because we're too overqualified. So where are all these jobs going? Millennials. And I think the next upcoming generation who is entering the workforce right now is your Generation Z. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave the middle child? Where does that leave all of us born maybe in the late 60s, the 70s, and the early 80s? Where does that leave us right now in the workforce? So a lot of the thought process that our generation has don't come from the fact that we're just bitter. It's the fact that our experiences kind of passed us over. Because when you really, really sit back and look at the workforce, it's the baby boomers who are retiring. And those jobs are now going to the millennials who they feel are the ones that's adapt in technology. But hello, with Generation X, growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of technology. My first computer was a Commodore 64 computer that I had to learn the program in the basic language. And as we got more advanced in technology, we also learned and adjusted and adapted to that technology. Everyone that's in the Gen X, for the most part, that's in the Generation X generation. So we know about technology. Hell, we was around at the cusp of technology, at the cusp, at the height of everything. I didn't always have a cell phone. When I was coming up in high school, I had a beeper. Okay. But cell phones came out. Cell phones blew up. I'm not afraid of technology. I'm not afraid of a cell phone. And a lot of us in this generation aren't. But it's just that we get passed over because simply where we fall in the generation scheme. So no, I'm not upset. And one of these type of individuals who blame generations, who blame the baby boomers for being so hard on us, or the millennials who pretty much is the showcase generation right now in the workforce. But I just look at where we stand as Generation X, and the reason for this video is because, yeah, we have skills to offer too. We definitely do. We was around before technology hit where it is today. Video games, started out with Atari, 2600, Pac-Man. Saw Nintendo. We saw Sega Genesis. We saw Super Nintendo. We was around with the evolution of all of this technology before it came big. So we know how to adjust and adapt. So if you are in the Generation X and you experience some of the things that I discussed in this video, then you can see why a lot of us feel the way that we do. But there's no worry, because we're not going anywhere. We're around, but as the older generations get older and we become where the baby boomers are right now, we're going to be probably the most valued generation and popular, because we've been there. We've been done that. We've proven that we can adjust and adapt, and we are equipped to do the job. So most people may have forgotten about Generation X or simply passed Generation X by, but just from what I see and what I researched, we're not going nowhere. And as the younger generation grows up, I say all those teenagers right now who are maybe 13, 14-year-olds, part of, I believe, Generation Z, we're going to be the generation that's really going to be able to school them on their experience, because, hey, we're going to be there and we're not going anywhere. So I thought that I would share my thoughts on that, because I wanted to do a video about this for a while, and I just decided that. But even though society, when they look at generations, look at baby boomers, millennials, and beyond, and sort of ignore Generation X, we're not going anywhere. We're here. We can adjust and adapt, and we know what it was like before technology. We're not afraid of it. We're strong, and we're just going to get stronger. And a lot of the younger generations are going to benefit from our mindset, our experiences, and where we are. So next time you meet someone who's a Generation X and they talk like they're cynical or they don't take any BS or can point it out, it's a reason for that. We know what we've been through. We know that we can make it, and we know that we have a lot to offer. So that's all I wanted to say in this video. You can join me on this channel for future videos on future topics. I'll be discussing a lot, primarily in business and your career. So thank you for your time and attention. And I definitely look forward to speaking with you again in another video.